because hopefully this will be a resource for others who are unable to be here today. Okay, a quick review of the agenda. We have you for an hour and we will be sure to keep on track with that timing. We've already done the welcome and introductions. We're going to do a quick review of community foundations, kind of the Community Foundation 101. Then Emily's going to provide an overview on finance and investments. Andrea is actually going to go next with the fund development work. Then I will follow with an overview of grants and programs. And then we'll, of course, close by addressing any of your lingering questions. So that's the plan for today. And before diving in, I also want to just call out that this orientation for both St. Croix Valley Foundation board members and our affiliates continues to be a work in progress. This is actually the first time we've done it in this way, where we've invited both our board and the affiliate boards to join us for an orientation. As we try to better understand how to get people up to speed, how to supplement what's provided in the CF Express videos that we make available. So my ask of you as you're listening is to just be thinking about how we can better the orientation process, how we can better get people up to speed as they're joining both our board and our affiliate boards. So keep that in mind as we're going through this. Okay. First, the Community Foundation 101. So what is a community foundation? And I have a quote up on this slide from Harris, I think Joff is how I say his name. He's the founder of the Cleveland Foundation, actually the world's first community foundation back in 1914. And I think it sums up the idea of a community foundation very well. So you know that, wouldn't it be nice if an individual making a will could leave it to benefit a community essentially forever and ever. And so he had that idea, and thus the Community Foundation model was born. So that just provides a little grounding. Emily, can you? Yes. So community foundations are dedicated to improving the lives of people in a very defined geographic area. They generally focus on bringing together, the financial resources of a community, individuals, families, businesses, to support nonprofits, to support initiatives going on in the community, and basically the overall well-being of a community. We're especially committed to building endowed philanthropic assets that support communities forever. And a couple of the quotes I've heard since starting at the Community Foundation back in 2014 is, one way to think of it is a community foundation is a community savings account, where a United Way may be more of a community's checking account. And another quote, that community foundations have the privilege of operating at this really wonderful nexus of generosity. We get to work with those super generous donors and understanding then how to respond to community need. So those are two quotes that I reference quite often. So last I checked, and I think this may be a little outdated even, there's 750 community foundations currently operating in the United States, in urban areas and rural areas. They're in every state. Interestingly, we have over 20 in Minnesota and close to 30 in Wisconsin. And worldwide, so there are community foundations all over the world. There's close to 1,700 community foundations. And I think we're very, very lucky to have one right here in the St. Croix Valley. So this, again, provides kind of those check boxes of what is a community foundation. We're nonprofit, 501c3. We're publicly supported by a whole bunch of unrelated donors, building endowed funds, defined geographic area. Grant making is not limited. We're very broad in how we offer and provide grants. We're responsible and accountable to this community, and a very well-defined mission. So that's, again, just a quick overview. So again, a grounding in St. Croix Valley Foundation. So taking it from that broader, what is a community foundation, to more, okay, so what is the St. Croix Valley Foundation? We were founded back in 1995. I'm not sure if you've all heard the story of how that happened. The story is that a very large estate gift from one of the Anderson executives, at least this is a story I heard, left the Valley and went to the St. Paul Foundation. And our community leaders were outraged. You know, that should be a gift that should be supporting this Valley that we love and the communities we love. And so those community leaders got together to develop a foundation right here in the Valley that can accept some of those larger and more complex gifts and keep that philanthropy, keep those contributions supporting our region. So that's the story. Who knows? Well, Emily and Andrea will have to compare stories and see if we tell the same one. So since that time, the missions remained very constant, and that is to enhance the quality of life in the St. Croix Valley. And we've grown. We now serve 6 counties. This is a picture of our service area. Michelle, after our meeting this morning, where we examined 13 different community foundations, all with different affiliate models, the service area is definitely worthy of further exploration. So we serve 6 counties now, 4 here in Wisconsin, Burnett, Polk, St. Croix, and Pierce, and 2 we cross the river in Minnesota, Washington, and Chisago. And we do that through our 10 affiliated foundations. So we have 7 of those in Wisconsin, and you can see them highlighted here. There's the river going through the middle. So we have Northwest Alliance that serves Burnett and Northern Polk. Amory Area Community Foundation, New Richmond, Somerset, Hudson, River Falls, and Prescott. And then over in Minnesota, we have 3 affiliates, Chisago Lakes, Stillwater, and Lower St. Croix Valley Community Foundation. And since our founding, we've grown close to 90 million in assets, and Emily will provide a deeper dig into that in a minute. And we and our donors have awarded over $40 million in grants since that founding in 1995, primarily to organizations located right here in the St. Croix Valley. So what does affiliation mean? Well, since I started with the foundation, I've heard the St. Croix Valley Foundation, as least as it relates to our affiliates, called many things. I've heard it's called the umbrella organization or the parent organization. I don't know, those can have negative associations. But now, as I've learned more about the affiliate St. Croix Valley Foundation relationship, as I've worked with you all, I'm lucky to work with you all, I like to think of the St. Croix Valley Foundation as being the root system to this big, beautiful tree. We, the St. Croix Valley Foundation, are behind the scenes mostly helping affiliates do your beautiful work out in community. So I don't know, again, through our strategic plan and conversations that are happening at a task force level, we're examining that relationship a little bit more deeply. So more to come on what graphic we'll use going forward in the orientation next year. So St. Croix Valley Foundation affiliates are partners that we provide mutual benefits to one another. The St. Croix Valley Foundation leverages affiliate expertise, the relationships they have in community, the energy they have to have even a larger impact in our region. And then in turn, the St. Croix Valley Foundation provides that back office support, staffing, the systems we need, like databases, all of the policies, procedures, the different accreditation that we offer to our affiliates, and making sure we're keeping our charitable status. So legally, and this is a big reminder, there's one governing board, and that is the St. Croix Valley Foundation Board. And then our 10 affiliates offer advisory boards. So we like to say that those affiliates have their finger on the pulse on what's going on in local community, and they can feed that back to the St. Croix Valley Foundation. So as far as affiliate advisory board duties, there's actually very minimum required of an affiliate. You administer local grant making programs to respond to local needs. You recruit affiliate board members to serve your board well. And then we hope that you'll also work to raise money or build endowment in your communities. And I know since River Falls is on the call, they're doing a really wonderful job at that, especially right now with the campaign they have going on out in community. So asset development and endowment building is something that we hope our affiliates will help us accomplish. Some of our affiliates operate programs that are responding to community needs. Some of them work on nonprofit capacity building, and we'll talk more about that later. But again, the very basic that we ask our affiliates to do is to grant those dollars out from your endowed funds. Now, as far as the St. Croix Valley Foundation Governing Board and those duties, that governing board is charged with a little bit more. And our staff, we're filing all the required state and federal reports, including the audit, the Form 990, all that fun stuff that Emily gets to work on. We provide that financial investment oversight and administration. We process and acknowledge all the gifts. We maintain the database that includes all of our affiliate records and donor data. We process affiliate grant recommendations. We provide support for asset development. We provide support for the affiliate grant making programs, including the due diligence required and the reporting required around that grant making. We support advisory board meetings. So I try to get to as many as those affiliate board meetings as I can. And then we support our affiliates with some of the promotional strategies that you're doing out in community. So how do we do all of that? And Emily, I think you can flip the side. Through this small but mighty staff team. This is current. Oh, good. So there are 9 of us now, 2 full-time. Heather and Carrie are both full-time, and the rest of us, 7 of us, are, I think, all at 0.8. So that's your staff team there. The way it's structured, Heather's president and CEO. Emily and I are directors under her, and then we have 2 managers. Both Andrea and the marketing manager, and then our wonderful support staff under that. So that's the small but mighty team. Okay, so just a quick reminder, this again is a map of our service area and calling out our 10 different affiliates. And I've already referenced a little bit about how we're exploring that model, how we best support these 10 different, very different affiliates. So we've been involved in a strategic planning process for the past year. And one of the themes the consultants identified after months of community engagement work was that there was profound confusion, I think was the quote that's in the report, about the purpose, the structure, the identity, and the governance of our affiliate programs. And so that was a red flag for that consulting team. And they asked that the St. Croix Valley Foundation board convene a task force to provide some clarity, not only for us and for the external community, but also for our affiliates. What makes for a successful affiliate? What can we expect from one another? And that is a work in progress. I have already indicated Michelle was on a meeting this morning where we're starting to dig into that work. So there's much more to come on that affiliate model over the course of the next few months. So before we move on, are there any questions about kind of Community Foundations 101, about the affiliate St. Croix Valley Foundation model, the history, role, responsibilities, anything? Otherwise, we'll continue. I'm taking a look to see if I see. Okay, looks like we don't have any hands raised. So good, clear as mud, I'm guessing. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what a lot of people in the Community Foundation world reference, and that's the 3-legged stool of a community foundation. So we've got the asset development, the work of F&I essentially, and fund development, all that they do to invest, to manage, and to grow those endowed funds and those charitable funds. And then nonprofit support, that's the work the committee I staff does. We call it grants and programs, to make grants to our nonprofit partners and to assist with the capacity building work and need of our nonprofit partners. And then lastly, our community leadership work. What are we doing out in community to organize convenings, have conversations, lift up local leaders around important opportunities and potential issues. So we're going to talk about that three-legged stool next. And that's when I believe I turn it over to you, Emily, to talk about finance and investments.
Yes, thank you. So in an effort of time, I'll go relatively fast. I have a lot of information to cover, but I'll go pretty quick. Please chime in if you have questions. And of course, we'll leave time at the end for questions too. But let's take a quick look at St. Croix Valley Foundation assets and our fund types. So at the end of fiscal year 2023, we operate on a fiscal year running July 1st to June 30th. So not that long ago here, we ended our FY23 fiscal year end, and we had approximately 87 million in assets at that time. And this pie chart that you're looking at divides those assets into three buckets: endowed, long-term not endowed, and pass-through. So an endowment is a permanent fund that provides perpetual income stream for the organization, program, or purpose for which the fund was established. Contributions to an endowed fund are invested, and a portion of the earnings are made available each year as expendable. It's important to note that not the earnings are available each year, but it's the calculated spendable value, which helps ensure that even in years when the market performs poorly, that those endowed funds are available for distribution and supporting those nonprofits on a regular basis in a consistent manner with funding. And you can see that approximately 60% of our total assets are endowed. Then we have a fund group called long-term non-endowed, which is nearly identical to an endowed fund in the way it's invested and how spendables are calculated. But the difference is that in extenuating circumstances with approval of 3/4 of the nonprofit's board of directors, that organization could invade the principal of the fund in order to spend more than the calculated principal. So some nonprofits like that flexibility, while others prefer an endowed fund, wanting to be confident in the permanence of those assets. So about 32% of our total assets are long-term non-endowed. And then we have pass-through funds, which are also referred to as our short-term non-endowed funds. So these account for roughly 7% of our total assets at the end of last fiscal year. They are not invested. These are short-term funds, in and out, easily thought of as a charitable checking account, for example. Pass-through funds are a tool for individuals who are looking for tax relief, especially with the higher standard deductions that have come through in the last few years. So for an example, a donor may wish to establish a pass-through donor-advised fund with a gift of $50,000, which then they can itemize that for deductions in that tax year, but then know that they intend to spread the granting out from that fund over the next several years when they won't be itemizing on their tax return. So a couple important things that are to note is that funds, when we say we're talking about funds, those are composite funds. They are component funds of the St. Croix Valley Foundation. So these are assets of the St. Croix Valley Foundation. Once the donor gifts the money to the St. Croix Valley Foundation, it is St. Croix Valley Foundation assets. The donors are advisors to their funds. They can recommend where grants go, but SCVF owns those assets. Also, we really, as you'll hear throughout discussions and presentations, that we emphasize permanent funds. So while funds, we do have funds that aren't endowed, the history of community foundations really are built and rooted in endowment funds. So this pie chart looks at the exact same bucket, the exact same 87 million, but it breaks it into a different pieces. It's a different part of the pie. So this categorizes our assets by fund group. So within these fund groups, we can have endowed, long-term non-endowed, or pass-through funds, but they are designated as a certain type of fund according to that right part of the chart there. So agency funds, or nonprofit agency funds, account for about 44% of our total assets. These are nonprofit organizations that establish funds to take advantage of St. Croix Valley Foundation's investment expertise, economies of scale, when it comes to lowering rates for investments, our capacity to accept complex gifts and non-tangible support, such as donor matchmaking and board education. So St. Croix Valley Foundation handles the investment and administration of those funds, which allows the nonprofit organization to focus on its charitable mission and accept complex gifts to forever support that organization in the future. Donor advised funds are about 18% of our total assets. So donor advised funds essentially establish an individual, family, or business foundation within the St. Croix Valley Foundation, which provides donors with those tax advantages like we talked about. Once the fund is established, the fund advisors can recommend grants at any time to a 501c3 charitable entity. Let's see. Donor designated are our next category. That's about 12% of our total assets. These are similar to donor advised funds, but they make annual giving really easy in that they automatically provide grants to a nonprofit organization that's chosen by the donor at the time the fund is established until they decide differently. So donor designated funds really appeal to donors who already know which charities they want to grant and support each year. Scholarship funds are about 11% of our total assets. Those enable donors to help deserving students further their education, of course. Donors can designate any level of education from preschool to vocational, postgraduate work, as well as a certain field of study and set eligibility requirements. And St. Croix Valley Foundation staff work with those donors to determine how the recipients will be selected and administer the scholarships. So we have some scholarship committees. We also grant to schools who have their own scholarship committees. They're all structured a little bit differently. Field of interest funds account for about 9% of our total assets. Field of interest funds give donors the opportunity to target their contribution to one or more specific area that they care about most, such as music education, health and wellness, the arts, the environment. These funds are broad in scope, yet they're targeted to meet the needs of the region. So our staff, our very knowledgeable staff and our volunteers use their expertise to identify, evaluate, and award grants to the most qualified and deserving organization and programs in each of those areas. The field of interest funds appeal to donors who want to give back to the community, but don't want to be personally involved in their grant making. They trust the organization to know what's best for the community within that broad umbrella of category. Then we have our unrestricted or undesignated funds that are about 5% of our total assets. These unrestricted funds are established without a restriction on how they'll be used. So unrestricted funds therefore give us the most broad category and greatest flexibility to respond to changing and emerging needs in our community. So unrestricted funds appeal to donors who have a trusting relationship with the St. Croix Valley Foundation and who understand that community needs are constantly changing and may be very different in the future from what they are today. A prime example of this is our COVID-19 relief fund and how no one knew that certainly that was coming down the line, but because we could have flexible funds, we could respond to that need at that time.
Hey, Emily, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And I should know the answer, and I'm guessing they're wondering the same thing. Where do the affiliate funds get lumped in this graphic? Is it in the...
All these type of funds as well. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they have different types of funds within their affiliate family of funds that they get lumped in each of them. Okay, got it.
Yep.
And Emily, I have a question too. As you did the pie before this, you had pass-through funds and you walked through your fund groups. So just to clarify, these don't need to be endowed funds. I could give you $20,000 and you could spend out that entire 20 in, if I'm going to say I'm going to do it all in scholarship, the foundation isn't retaining any of those. Or is there a percentage of
if it's a pass-through fund? Yep, if it's a pass-through fund, that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
It doesn't have to. We don't have. Yep. It can be a donor-designated short-term fund. It can be a donor-advised short-term fund. It can be a donor-advised endowed fund.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And could you? So really, the fund groups that you list here could be true for endowed funds and or pass-through funds.
Correct. So it's the same pie. It's the same $87.3 million. It's just broken into different pieces. So it's just a different way to look at the same pie. Same assets. They can be either one. So an agency fund can be a short-term fund, or it can be an endowed fund. A donor advised fund can be a short-term fund, a pass-through / short-term. I use those words interchangeably, or an endowed fund. Yes.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. The last piece of the pie here is fiscal sponsorship. We provide that service to organizations that are looking to gain their 501c3 status. So it's a way that we support our local nonprofits. We provide the fiduciary oversight for the project and help them get that 501c3 status. So ideally in a year or two, they get their wings and fly, and we help them get established as a tax deductible entity. We try to limit that to 2 years that we help during that process. So quickly, just to dig in a little bit to the finance function of the foundation. So as I mentioned before, we run on a fiscal year ending June 30th. That's during our slower donation time of the summer, which helps for us to do all the fun audit things that we need to do. At the end of our last fiscal year, we had about 512 funds. So when you looked back at that pie, you can think of it that another way to slice that pie too is by each and every individual fund that we hold. So there's about 512 of those at the end of the fiscal year. We account for each and every one of those funds individually by a process called fund accounting. So each fund can be thought of as its own company, its own set of books, its own balance sheet. They're all individual. But then they're all rolled up and consolidating for financial reporting. We have well, it's not really new anymore, but it's sort of new, foundation software called Foundant, which we implemented in July of 2021. So that gives us really great ability to real-time data interact with our donors, with our fund holders. We can provide quarterly fund statements, which upload to the portal. It really gives us a lot of real-time accessible data to our donors and our fund advisors. We receive contributions in a variety of ways. It's actually one of the great benefits of a community foundation is that we can process multiple gifts and complex gifts as well. So we process everything from cash to stocks, both private and public stocks, real estate, bequests, charitable remainder trusts. We can take a lot of complex gifts and deal with those. Our distributions come in the form of grants, program expenses, operating expenses for our affiliate foundations. We process grants and vouchers twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays of the month. And finally, our operations. So supporting the actual staff team and the work that we're doing behind the scenes here at the foundation is supported through fees that are assessed on the underlying funds that we hold. And those are assessed quarterly on our funds. And the type of fund that it is, scholarship, donor advised, agency, dictates the type of fee that's charged. And we have a big fee sheet that we're happy to share. If you'd like to see it, and it's shared with all of our donors when they set up a new fund. And then real quick, touch on our investment side of things here a little bit. So our funds are accounted for separately, as I mentioned, but all the assets are pooled together for the community foundation as a whole, which allows us to take advantage of that economies of scale when I talked about the underlying fees that we pay on our investments and our investment advisors, things like that. So through that larger asset size, we have access to those better vehicles for investment and better rates. But the assets are pooled together for investment purposes, but then at the end of each month, when we allocate earnings, those are allocated back down to the funds at their individual fund level. We currently have 4 investment pools. 2 of them are long-term and 2 of them are short-term. So our long-term portfolio and our ESG portfolio are what our endowed and long-term non-endowed funds can invest in. And we have a short-term portfolio and an intermediate portfolio that our pass-through short-term funds can invest in. Our ESG portfolio was added in August of 2021, and our intermediate portfolio was just added in September of 2022. Donors, when they set up a fund, they can select which portfolio that they want to participate in. Long-term only has 2 choices, short-term has 2 choices. And then we do offer every spring an open enrollment period for our investment pools that donors can recommend a change to their underlying investment if they so choose. Important to note that a community foundation invests for perpetuity. So hopefully you've had a chance to watch some of those CF Express videos, and you'll hear in those that they discuss how the investment strategy for a community foundation is different than that for an individual. So an individual invests for their retirement. They have a date in sight. They know when they need to access those funds and spend them down. Whereas the community foundation, we need to invest forever. So we invest into perpetuity. So it's a totally different lens on how to invest. There is no end date. We're looking to take that $50,000 endowment and have it last forever. So we invest in a very different way than an individual would. Our spending policy, you heard me talk about spendables a little bit before, but you'll hear that term a lot. It represents the amount that long-term endowed funds can grant each fiscal year. You'll hear it called spendable, ATS, available to spend, ATG, available to grant. We talk about it in a variety of ways, but we're all referring to the same thing at the end of the day. It's a board-approved policy that dictates the percentage used when we calculate that spendable. So currently it's 4.5%. So the calculation looks at the average balance of the trailing 16 quarters in an endowed fund, multiplies that balance by the 4.5%, and that's the amount that the endowed fund can spend that fiscal year. So the goal is that over time, the earnings on funds are enough to cover the investment expenses, the spendables, and inflation to preserve the purchasing power, buying power of that endowment. And so that's what that equation on the right looks at. We take our spending policy plus an inflation projection, or where we think and where our consultants think that it's going to go, the cost that the investment advisory and administrative services cost, and then we come to what we think is our long-term rate of return that we need to achieve, that 8.6% annually, in order to have those funds last forever. First State Bank and Trust is our custodian. So that's where the money resides. And Fund Valuation Group, or FEG, is our advisor, investment advisor. So we have two different models with them. We have a traditional consulting model, which is our long-term portfolio, and our intermediate portfolio. That's where they bring recommendations and suggestions to our Finance and Investment Committee as far as managers go, investment-related topics. But then the Finance Committee, the F&I Committee, has the ultimate responsibility for making those decisions and executing within the portfolio. Our ESG portfolio is a little bit different. We have a OCIO model, which stands for Outsourced Chief Investment Officer. And in that particular portfolio, FEG manages it. They do the buying and the selling, they do the due diligence, they make the changes and have the authority to make changes in that underlying portfolio, informing the Finance Committee, of course, of what's going on, but they have the ability to make those changes. So my final slide is who, what, how does this all happen? So the Finance and Investment Committee, also referred to as F&I for short, we meet every fourth Tuesday of even months. They oversee investments, review monthly investment performance, underlying investment managers, alignment with investment policy, give guidance on a rebalance when needed. It's important to note that while F&I has been delegated the task to do all of those things, the St. Croix Valley Foundation Board of Directors actually has the ultimate fiduciary responsibility over those investments. And that probably came through in the videos if you've watched those. The tasks are part of the committee's work, but the overall fiduciary responsibility is the actual board of the St. Croix Valley Foundation. So speaking of the board meets the second Tuesday of odd months, and they review and approve things that have been recommended through these committees. So the committee recommends the 990, for example. The board doesn't have to do the nitty-gritty, but they do have the ultimate responsibility. I think that ends my slides. So before I turn it over to Andrea, are there any questions about finance and investments? It was really fast, so a lot of information there. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I will turn it over to Andrea.
Well, hello, everyone. After listening to both Angie and Emily, I discovered there might be some repetition here, so bear with me, but I will try to condense. Here at St. Croix Valley Foundation, we accept a variety of gifts, which is very unique and which makes us stand out from other foundation models. We accept everything from real estate to insurance policies. We can take someone's home, we can take stock, appreciated stock. And of course, cash is always welcome. So we are a conduit so that donors have many, many options as far as how and the way that they would like to give. So as I mentioned earlier, I get to work with many, many generous donors in the Valley. A big part of my role is listening, discovering what their passions are, and learning their intentions on how they would like to meet their charitable giving goals. So as a community foundation, because of these unique gifts that we can receive, it makes us very flexible, and we're able to move forward in ways that other foundations are not. So although we do, as was mentioned earlier, accept what we call short-term or pass-through funds, and also long-term non-endowed funds, for today's purposes, we are, as an organization, increasingly focused on gifts of endowment. So for today's purposes, I'd like to really focus in on the power of endowment. So what is endowment? So if you take a look at the slide, the graph, the highlighted areas, this is just to show you that a gift of $100,000 that's invested over 21 years is able to replenish itself, granting out just over $100,000 in grants in those 20 years as it continues to grow. As was mentioned earlier as well, one of the benefits of having an endowed fund is our goal is to not take from the principal investment or gift, but to utilize the earnings. And as Emily mentioned, 4.5% of the earnings, the annual earnings of that fund, are available for the donor to be able to direct how they would like those funds to be utilized, either via grants or however they have determined to utilize those dollars. And I guess in that sentence, I'm referring to when they're looking at donor advised funds. But in any case, the remaining 2.5% covers the fees that we charge in order to manage these funds. And if a fund is managed, correctly, we leave a little behind to grow, and hopefully that fund will continue to grow into perpetuity, leaving a legacy for communities of the Valley to enjoy for generations to come. Looking forward, thank you, Emily. So a little bit about planned giving and building legacies. So a donor may choose to plan for a future gift by leaving a bequest to the St. Croix Valley Foundation. Perhaps they would like to leave assets from their estate or maybe their home. They're certainly able to do that, but leaving a legacy does not have to wait until they are gone. Some donors like to be involved in the granting of the funds that they have gifted. They like to see their gift in action while they're still here with us. They may choose to create a fund, like was mentioned earlier, a donor advised fund, where they actually are able to determine the benefactors annually of that 4.5 spendable amount of the fund revenues for the year. Some of our funds are like a donor designated fund. The beneficiaries are predetermined. Maybe they don't want to make those decisions annually, and they might know up front that they want to support their causes that they've been already supporting for years. So there's many ways that the funds can be directed depending on the donor's giving intentions. So sometimes a donor during their lifetime may have a major transition. It could be they receive a gift from an aged parent, or perhaps they have sales of real estate and or are transitioning from the sale of a business. This might be an opportunity for them to use some of the cash or the resources that they've just received and be able to put it towards a gift while they're still alive. Maybe it's their IRA. They have to use their qualified charitable distributions and wish to start spending those on the building of a fund an endowed fund while they are still with us. So there are many ways that they can utilize these dollars. As was mentioned, Emily mentioned the unrestricted funds. Unrestricted, of course, offer the most flexibility for the St. Croix Valley Foundation, and it also gives us the responsiveness to be able to meet the needs, those that are seen and unforeseen, as the board sees the needs in that immediate moment. That being said, we also have field of interest funds, as Emily touched on. Most recently, we have created an environmental fund. It has not officially launched yet, but the dollars are there to do so this spring, and we're looking forward to making that a reality. Funds like our field of interest funds cover a more regional territory. Nonprofits within our 6-county region will be able to apply through a granting cycle if their program meets for example, that environmental funds qualifications. So the field of interest funds have a broader reach. Our affiliates, each of our 10 affiliates have a variety of funds with us. Most of them have, well, all of them, I believe, have an endowed fund. They are our affiliate. As you know, you're the boots on the ground. You know the needs of your communities better than we possibly could. So a gift to the St. Croix Valley Foundation can be designated by a donor to be placed in that affiliate community foundation. So that way they are ensuring that their communities that they hold dear continue to strive and strengthen. Agency funds, we have over 100 nonprofits that hold agency funds with the St. Croix Valley Foundation. Our nonprofits are doing wonderful work out there, and we help them by facilitating those funds, investing them, and helping them to grow so that they can continue to do the work that they do. And of course, we have 70+ scholarship funds that are going to continue the advancement for educational purposes of our area students. We recently relaunched a Legacy Society. The Legacy Society is a group of committed donors who have determined that they are going to continue to support well into the future the causes that they hold dear. And that being said, we hope to continue to grow our Legacy Society, and we're actively reaching out to our prospective donors who might be willing to consider a bequest. Legacy donors are giving an endowed gift from their estate. So again, as was mentioned earlier, we work out in the community with a variety of key partners. One of my initiatives right now is to really strengthen and build those relationships with our professional advisors. First State Bank and Trust is a key partner, and they help us work through complex gifts. I will at times sit down with an advisor and a donor and talk through that donor's intentions, and they help me to see different ways that a gift could be directed. We also work, as I am right now, with affiliate board members, both current and past. I'm going to be sending out a letter to each of you very shortly, asking you to help me connect with those professional advisors in your area. perhaps you know of some donors that we're not aware of, or prospect donors that might be interested in leaving a legacy. Maybe you know somebody who has a very passionate involvement in an area and we haven't connected yet. I'm happy to reach out, make those connections with you, and I certainly welcome any types of introductions to those prospects, whether it be via phone call or an email that might include me, and we can take it from there, and you're welcome to be included in on those conversations. We encourage our current and former board members to consider what their legacy is, and as I mentioned, to engage with us as we try to reach out in community. And as also mentioned earlier, our nonprofit partners are key. They do so much wonderful work out there, and we want their endowment funds to keep growing so they can continue to do the wonderful work that they do. And we're there for them to help them get that done. How does it happen? We have a wonderful fund development committee that's comprised of current board members and very passionate volunteers. Their job is to engage the board. The board ultimately, as Emily mentioned earlier, is making the final decision, but they will counsel and both staff and the board on best practices for growing those funds. As they're very involved with helping me work through perhaps there's events and plans to move these assets forward. So they do everything from, right now we're reviewing policies and procedures, and we'll be making recommendations on reporting on that asset development very shortly. They are a key part of the team, and I'm very thankful to have them on board. And maybe some of you will be joining me too. At this point, I guess we're going back to you. Is it Angie? I think this slide belongs to you, but I welcome any questions.
Yep. Any questions for Andrea? Otherwise, I have 8 minutes and I'm going to power through. So this now is the second and third leg of the stool that we talked about earlier, is how we support area nonprofits. And the main way we do that, and the way we're probably most well known, is through our grant making, through donor advised and donor designated funds, our competitive grant programs, our affiliate grant programs, our scholarships. And then we also have this work we do around capacity building for our nonprofit partners. Right now, we offer a program called Consultants in Service, CIS for short, for nonprofits in the Valley, small and emerging nonprofits in the Valley. And that's where we match volunteer consultants. We have about 13 of them currently. They donate their time and expertise on a variety of topics, and we match those consultants with area nonprofit need through a very straightforward application process. So that's the CIS program. Okay, flipping forward. So our competitive grant making, we do some regional competitive grant making through those field of interest funds that both Emily and Andrea spoke of. At this point, we have several endowed field of interest funds. We call them Valley Impact Funds, again, established by very passionate donors for super specific causes. 4 of those funds are currently operating competitive grant programs, and we're hoping to launch a 5th one this year, as Andrea alluded to. And those grant programs, again, are region-wide. They cover that whole 6-county region. So they're around music education. Actually, just quickly, music education is such a great example of the power of endowment that Andrea spoke of earlier. If you were at our recent celebration of philanthropy event, you heard that fund was launched 20 years ago through a $600,000 gift. Wonderful. It is granted now over $600,000. I think it's about $615,000 that we've granted out into community. And the fund balance today is approaching $700,000. So anyway, that's a great story of endowment. Valley Arts Initiative actually is a really small endowed fund, and then we do additional fundraising to be able to support the competitive grant program for Valley Arts. And that's all about supporting our arts organizations and those cultural activities that enrich this region. And that grant program actually is going to go live here very soon. Health and wellness, for several years focused on childhood obesity. We shifted 3 years ago, following COVID. We pivoted in partnership with our affiliates to fund mental health initiatives throughout our region. And then this fiscal year, we just launched it actually last week. We launched the First 1,000 Days Grant Program. This fund was established last year to support the physical, the mental, the emotional, and social development of children during those first very critical 1,000 days of life. That's about the first 3 years. And so we'll be funding organizations and programs that do that. And then again, the environmental fund, we hope to launch this spring. Okay, so just quickly want to point out that our competitive grant programs through the Field of Interest Fund are all about aligning with donor intent. That's very important to a community foundation. That's outlined specifically in a fund agreement, and it is our job and our board's job to make sure that we honor that donor intent. All of our Field of Interest Fund grant programs are granted out through a competitive application process. We make the guidelines very broadly and widely known and distributed. It's a very transparent process. And then we involve community members that are passionate in reviewing those grant applications. And it looks very similar at the affiliate level as well. Okay, and then on to the third leg of our stool, that community leadership leg. That's all about convening, and the St. Croix Valley Foundation and our affiliates have dabbled in community leadership work and convening for several years. The program we're probably most well known for is called Conversations of the Valley, or COV. And the idea of COV is to really help strengthen community connections, raise awareness around issues that are facing our region. They used to be in-person programs way back when, luncheons, and then we shifted to Zoom in 2021. I'm sure you know why, but still hosting over the lunch hour. And we had such a spike in attendance that we decided to stay with that Zoom programming for the last several years. So COV this year is actually planning, we're shifting the model a little bit to lift up the good work happening right here in our region. And we're going to feature the recipients of the First 1,000 Days grant making. So let them share the work that they're doing and hopefully connect some of our donors to that work. Some other examples of how we stepped into community leadership from the past, we did a project on it called the Remember Project about raising awareness of dementia. Hudson, I believe, and Michelle, I don't know if you were involved at this point, did some programming around the heroin or opioid addiction issue. And then our affiliates have also dabbled in this work, doing some own convening at a very local level. Some examples are, again, Hudson, who did convenings around opioids and mental health. Lower St. Croix Valley did some convening around building a new bike path. So some convening happens at a very local level. Okay, I think I'm ready for the next slide. I'm going quite fast. So the who, how, what, when. I staff what's called the Grants and Programs Committee, or the G&P Committee. We, of course, support the mission of the St. Croix Valley Foundation by making both programmatic and grant making recommendations that then roll up to the board of directors for final approval or ratification. We too meet every other month. We operate using a board approved charter. We put together an annual work plan at the start of the fiscal year, and that work is really supported by subcommittees and task force. So we have the grant review panels, we have the COV task force, and then they report to the G&P committee at those every other month meetings. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's anything I need to really get to. I think that that's enough. So let's go to the next slide. I did want to just let you know there are other resources. We have a great board members only section of our website that you can get to using the password toolbox. That provides access to several different things, orientation booklets, the CF Express training that we've referenced a couple times. So that is always an option. Those videos are really amazing. So if you haven't yet watched them, we highly recommend that you do so. And then just a reminder that every month, usually at the end of the month, I send an affiliate newsletter to both our affiliate board members and our St. Croix Valley Foundation board members, try to pack it with all the information of what's going on at the St. Croix Valley Foundation, programs, grants that are live, etc. So please look at that newsletter that's sent out every month for really up-to-date information. And of course, the staff's always available to answer questions. Whew, now I'm going to take a deep breath because I just did that and I think about 7 minutes. So any questions? We're right at 1 o'clock. I'm sorry that we didn't leave as much time for questions as I had hoped, but any questions we can answer right now. Otherwise, it was delightful to have you here. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Again, if you have recommendations on how to improve the orientation process, we welcome them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Nice to meet you. And Alex, thanks for being here. And it looks like Mike and Michelle already said we got to go. So, all right. On that note, we'll let you off. Again, thanks for sharing your time with us and feel free to reach out with any questions or recommendations.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Alex. Take care. Okay, I'm going to end it, ladies.